I thought it was a mistake. Banks make errors all the time, don't they? But when I opened the notification on my phone that Tuesday morning, my coffee went cold in my hand. Wire transfer approved. 47, không. I stared at the screen, reading it 3 times. I hadn't approved any wire transfer. I was supposed to be in Sedona, scattering my husband Tom's ashes like he'd asked. Instead, I was sitting in a hotel room at Siam, watching my life savings disappear. My hand shook as I opened the banking app. 3 transfers in the past week. 47, không. 23, không. 31, không. Over $100,000, gone. And I knew exactly who had access to those accounts. My niece, Jessica. Let me back up. Tom died 4 months ago. Heart attack. He was 68, I was 64, and we were supposed to have more time. We were supposed to travel, finally use that RV we'd been restoring. Instead, I spent 3 months in a fog, barely able to get out of bed, let alone handle the mountain of paperwork that comes with death. Insurance claims, estate lawyers, bank accounts, investment portfolios. Tom had always handled our finances, and suddenly it was all on me. That's when Jessica showed up. Aunt Carol, you shouldn't have to deal with this alone, she'd said, taking the stack of papers from my hands. Let me help. I work in finance, remember? This is what I do. I remembered being so grateful. Jessica was my late sister's daughter, and we'd always been close. She'd been at the funeral, crying just as hard as I had. When she offered to help, it felt like a blessing. Someone who understood money. Someone family. Someone I could trust. I'll just need access to the accounts temporarily, she'd explained. To pay bills, handle the estate stuff. You focus on healing, Aunt Carol, I've got this. I'd signed the papers, added her to my accounts, given her my passwords. Because that's what family does, right? You help each other. You trust each other. And for 2 months, everything seemed fine. Jessica would stop by twice a week with updates. The insurance claim is processing. I paid the property taxes. Your investment portfolio needs rebalancing, but don't worry, I'm on it. She'd make me tea, sit with me, tell me stories about her mom. It felt like I had my sister back. In a way. But then I noticed small things. The first time was 6 weeks after Tom died. I'd mentioned wanting to donate to the animal shelter in Tom's name, and Jessica had said, "Oh, I already did that. $5,000. Didn't I tell you?" I didn't remember discussing an amount that large, but grief makes your memory fuzzy. I let it go. The second time was when my neighbor mentioned seeing Jessica at my house on a Saturday. She had some men with her, loading boxes into a truck. I'd confronted Jessica gently. "Oh, Aunt Carol, yes, I should have told you. I was clearing out Uncle Tom's workshop, all those old tools and car parts. I donated them to that vocational school. You said you wanted to declutter. Remember? I had said that months ago. In passing. But I hadn't meant right away, and I certainly hadn't meant his restored Salmui by Mustang engine parts. Tom had spent years collecting those. But they were gone now, and Jessica looked so earnest, so helpful. I convinced myself I was being ungrateful. The third time should have been my wake-up call. I'd gone to get my mail and found a statement from an investment account I didn't recognize. When I asked Jessica about it, she'd laughed it off. "Oh, that's the new account I set up for better returns. I moved some of your funds around. You're earning Bay % now instead of BA %. Uncle Tom would have wanted you to maximize your returns." I'd nodded along, but something felt wrong. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that statement, the way Jessica had so quickly explained it away, the way she'd patted my hand like I was a confused child. That's when I started paying attention. I began keeping a journal. Every time Jessica visited, every financial conversation, every "I took care of that for you." I started checking my bank statements daily. I called my insurance company myself and asked about the claim. They'd never received anything. I called the animal shelter. No donation in Tom's name. I called the vocational school. No workshop tools donated. Jessica had been lying to me for 2 months, but I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because I learned something important in my 64 years. People who lie once will lie again, and if I confronted her without proof, she'd just create more lies. I needed evidence. That's when I called my son, Michael, who lives in Boston. I didn't want to worry him while he was dealing with his own grief over Tom. But I needed help. Mom, he said when I explained. We're installing cameras, and I'm coming home. Within 3 days, my house had 4 security cameras: living room, office, front door, and garage, all connected to an app on my phone. Michael also helped me set up alerts for every financial transaction over Mot, home. If anything moves, you'll know, he said. Then, we waited. I told Jessica I was going to Sedona for a week to scatter Tom's ashes. This wasn't entirely a lie. I really was going. But I was going to be watching. The cameras recorded constantly, and I could check them anytime from my phone. That's wonderful, Aunt Carol, Jessica had said, hugging me. Take all the time you need. I'll watch the house. I bet she would. I left on a Monday morning. By Monday afternoon, Jessica's car was in my driveway. I watched from my hotel room as she let herself in with the key I'd given her months ago. She went straight to Tom's office. For an hour, I watched her go through his desk drawers, his filing cabinet, his computer. She was looking for something. Then she made a phone call. I couldn't hear her, but I could read her lips enough to know she was frustrated. Whatever she was looking for, she hadn't found it. Tuesday morning, that's when the bank alerts started. Bonwebay, home transferred to an account I didn't recognize. I called the bank immediately. Ma'am. The transfer was initiated using your online banking credentials with the secondary authorization from Jessica Porter, who's listed as a joint account holder. I didn't authorize any transfer. I understand, ma'am, but we'll need you to file a formal dispute. And I hung up and called Michael. She's draining the accounts. How much? 47,000 so far. Michael was silent for 3 seconds. Call the bank back. Tell them to freeze everything except your primary checking. Then call a lawyer. I'm calling the police. No, the word surprised me. Not yet. Mom. She's stealing from you. I know. But if we stop her now, it's he said, she said. She's listed on the accounts. She'll say she was paying bills, handling estate expenses, that I'm confused because of grief. No, Michael. I need to let her finish. Finish robbing you? Finish revealing her plan. Over the next 3 days, I watched Jessica transfer Motjamhaimwebay home from various accounts. I watched her bring a man to my house, her boyfriend. I later learned. And load Tom's tools, his golf clubs, his coin collection into a truck. I watched her go through my jewelry box and pocket my mother's pearl necklace. I watched her bring a real estate agent through my house and discuss staging for sale. That's when I knew. She wasn't just stealing money. She was planning to sell my house. I called my lawyer, Richard Chen, who'd handled Tom's estate. Richard, I need you to come to my house Friday at high p.m. Bring notary. Tell Jessica you need to finalize some estate documents and I'm signing power of attorney over to her to handle the house sale. Carol, it's a trap, Richard. Just trust me. I also called Tom's brother, Frank, and his wife, Linda. I called my best friend, Margaret. I called my other nephew, Daniel, Jessica's cousin. I told them all the same thing. I need you at my house, Friday, at high p.m. It's important. Don't tell Jessica. And then I called Jessica. Sweetheart, I'm cutting my trip short. I realized I can't scatter Tom's ashes alone. It's too hard. But I also realized something else. I can't handle that big house anymore. All those memories. You were right when you mentioned downsizing. So I'm coming home Thursday, and I've asked Richard to draw up papers. I'm going to give you power of attorney to sell the house. You've done so much for me. It's time I made it official. There was a pause. Then, Aunt Carol, you don't have to. I want to. You've been so helpful, so patient with your grieving old aunt. The least I can do is make sure you're properly authorized to handle everything. I could hear the smile in her voice. If you're sure. I'm sure. Come Friday at high. Richard will have everything ready. I drove home Thursday night. I didn't sleep. I spent the whole night organizing documents. Bank statements, showing the transfers. Screenshots from the security cameras. Printouts of emails between Jessica and her boyfriend discussing the payout. Phone records showing she'd been in contact with real estate agents for 3 weeks. A jewelry appraisal from my homeowner's insurance showing my mother's necklace was worth muy high, hung. Friday morning, I set up my laptop in the dining room, where we'd all sit. I connected it to the TV on the wall. I had every piece of evidence queued up, ready to go. At Moat. Bonmui Lum. Margaret arrived. Then Frank and Linda. Then Daniel. They all knew something was wrong, but didn't know what. I'd asked them to wait in the kitchen. At Moat. Numui Lum. Richard arrived with his notary assistant. At High. Home exactly. Jessica walked in, wearing a cream blazer and carrying a designer bag. I'm pretty sure cost more than my monthly grocery budget. She hugged me. Aunt Carol, you look tired. Was the drive okay? It was fine, sweetheart. Come, let's sit. Richard has the papers. We sat at the dining room table. Richard laid out impressive-looking documents. Jessica was all smiles, playing the concerned niece perfectly. Aunt Carol, are you absolutely sure about this? I don't want you to feel pressured. I'm sure. You've been handling everything anyway. Might as well make it legal. Richard slid a paper toward me. Before we proceed, Carol, I need to verify some financial information. For the estate records, can you confirm your current account balances? I pulled out my bank statements. Well, according to these, my savings account should have Hai Chum Bon Mui Bai, Hung. My checking should have Mui Lum, Hung. My investment account should have T, Tam Mui Chin, Hung. Jessica nodded along. That sounds right. But when I checked this morning, my savings has Mot Cham Hai Mui, Hung. My checking has Tam, Hung. My investment account has Nam Mui Hai, Hung. That's Mot Cham Bai Mui Mot, Hung missing. I looked at Jessica. Do you know where it went? Her smile didn't falter. Oh, Aunt Carol, remember? Estate taxes, the probate fees, Uncle Tom's final medical bills. I've been paying all of that. Show me the receipts. What? The receipts. For Mot Chambai Mumot. Home in expenses. You've been handling everything, like you said. So you must have receipts. Jessica's smile tightened. I have them at home. I can bring them by tomorrow. That's strange. Because I called the IRS yesterday. Estate taxes haven't been filed yet. I called the hospital. Tom's bills were paid by insurance. I called the probate court. Those fees were, and I paid them myself in March. Jessica stood up. Aunt Carol, I think you're confused. Grief can make things fuzzy. Maybe we should postpone this. Sit down, Jessica. Something in my voice made her sit. I picked up the laptop remote and turned on the TV. Before we sign anything, I want to show everyone something. A video diary of my trip to Sedona. Jessica's face went pale. The first clip played. Monday afternoon, Jessica in Tom's office, going through drawers. This was Monday. I'd been gone 4 hours. The second clip. Jessica on her phone. I'd had the audio enhanced. Her voice came through the speakers. I can't find the safe combination. But it doesn't matter. Once I have power of attorney, I can hire someone to crack it. She said there's jewelry worth 50 grand in there. Frank made a sound in his throat. Linda grabbed his hand. Third clip. Tuesday morning, Jessica at my computer, transferring money. The screen showed the bank website clear as day. Bonwebe, hung to an account labeled J. Porter Personal. Fourth clip. Wednesday, Jessica and her boyfriend loading Tom's restored Mustang parts. Her boyfriend saying, "These'll get at least 20 grand on eBay, plus whatever the tools are worth." Fifth clip. Thursday, Jessica, with the real estate agent, the agent saying, "We can list it for Sauchamnamui Hum at current market rates. That's a quick sale. When did you say you're getting the power of attorney?" Jessica responding, "Tomorrow. The old lady's signing everything over. She doesn't have a clue." The old lady. I felt everyone's eyes on me, but I kept mine on Jessica. Her face had gone from pale to red to a strange gray color. "Aunt Carol, this isn't you don't understand. I understand perfectly. You stole Mutjamhaimui Bai, hung from my accounts. You stole Tom's property worth at least Bamui. Home. You stole my mother's pearl necklace. And you were planning to trick me into signing over my house so you could sell it and pocket Saucham Namui. Home, that's over. Tamcham. Home you planned to steal from me. I wasn't stealing. I was helping. You needed someone to manage. By lying to me? By telling me you donated to the animal shelter when you didn't? By moving my money into accounts I didn't know about? By bringing strangers into my home to take things that weren't yours? Jessica stood again, grabbed her purse. I don't have to listen to this. Yes, you do. Michael's voice came from the doorway. I hadn't even heard him come in. He walked over and stood next to me, his hand on my shoulder. Behind him came 2 police officers, Jessica Porter. One of them said. She looked around the room wildly. At me. At Michael. At Frank and Linda, who were both crying. At Daniel, her cousin, who looked like he might be sick. At Margaret, who just shook her head slowly. You're all overreacting, Jessica said, her voice high. This is a family misunderstanding. Aunt Carol is confused. She's grieving. She doesn't understand estate management. I understand theft, I said quietly. I understand that when I gave you access to my accounts, it was to help me pay bills. Not to move home into your personal accounts. I understand that when I gave you a key to my house, it was for emergencies. Not to steal my late husband's belongings. I understand that I trusted you, and you saw a confused old widow you could take advantage of. That's not. You told your boyfriend I was an old lady who doesn't have a clue. You told the real estate agent I was signing everything over. You forged my signature on documents to access accounts. I stood up, facing her. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? Or did you just think I was too old, too stupid, too grief-stricken to care? The officer stepped forward. Ma'am, we need you to come with us. We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, theft, and fraud. This is insane. She added me to the accounts. She gave me permission to pay bills, Richard said, speaking for the first time since the videos started. He pushed his glasses up. I reviewed the authorization forms. Carol granted you access to handle routine expenses and estate-related payments, not to transfer 6 figures into personal accounts, not to liquidate assets, not to plan the sale of her primary residence without her knowledge. As the officers led Jessica toward the door, she turned back to me. For a moment, I thought she might apologize. Instead, she hissed, "You're going to regret this. I was helping you. You needed me." "No," I said. "I needed someone I could trust. You're not that person." The door closed behind her. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Margaret wrapped her arms around me, and I finally let myself cry. The aftermath was messy. It turned out Jessica had been planning this for longer than I'd realized. She'd been in financial trouble for 2 years, credit card debt, student loans, a boyfriend with a gambling problem. When Tom died, she'd seen an opportunity, a grieving widow with assets, and no idea how to manage them. Easy target. The bank was able to reverse Tamui Chin, home of the transfers. The rest had already been spent. The police recovered Tom's Mustang parts and some of his tools from Jessica's storage unit. My mother's necklace was gone, probably already sold. Jessica pleaded guilty to avoid trial. Financial exploitation of an elderly person carries serious penalties in our state, and her lawyer convinced her that the video evidence was damning. She got 3 years in prison and was ordered to pay restitution of Mochumhaime Bai, Hum plus the value of the stolen property. Whether I'll ever see that money is another question. Her mother, my late sister, would have been heartbroken. I think about that a lot. How disappointed she would be, how she raised Jessica better than this. But addiction, debt, desperation, they make people do terrible things. Even to family, especially to family. Sometimes, because family is easiest to manipulate. Michael stayed for 2 weeks, helping me change all my passwords, close the accounts Jessica had access to, and set up better security systems. Not just cameras, but financial alerts, and a requirement that any transaction over phone needs a phone call verification from the bank. "Mom," he said before he left, "I should have been here more. After Dad died, I should have." "You have your own life, honey, your own family. I don't blame you. But if I'd been paying attention, Jessica wouldn't have been able to. Jessica made her choices. So did I. I chose to trust her without verifying. I chose to ignore the red flags because I wanted to believe family wouldn't hurt me. Those were my choices. He hugged me tight. I'm still sorry. Me too. Frank and Linda came by the next week with a casserole and an apology. We should have checked on you more, Linda said. After Tom passed, we should have been more present. I appreciated that, even though it wasn't their fault either. Everyone was dealing with their own grief. Tom was Frank's little brother. They'd grown up together, built their first car together, been best men at each other's weddings. His death hit Frank hard too. What surprised me most was Daniel, Jessica's cousin. He came by alone a few days after her arrest. Aunt Carol, I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know what she was doing. I know, sweetheart. I've been thinking about what she said. About you being old. About you not having a clue. And I realized I've thought that way too. Not about you specifically, but about older people in general. Like once you hit a certain age, you're just less sharp, less capable, less worth listening to. I poured him coffee. And now? Now I think that's bullshit. You caught her. You documented everything. You set a trap that even TV detectives would envy. You're 64, and you understood technology, legal strategy, and human psychology better than she did at 32. There's nothing less about you. That made me smile. Thank you, Daniel. No, thank you. For the reminder that age is just a number, and wisdom is what matters. The weeks turned into months. The legal process ground forward slowly. The house felt different now, both more mine and more empty. I'd thought scattering Tom's ashes would bring closure, but it turned out the real closure came from standing up for myself, from refusing to be a victim, from proving that grief doesn't equal weakness. I think a lot about the moment I saw that first bank alert. How my hands shook. How scared I was. How I almost called Jessica to ask if there was a mistake. Almost gave her a chance to cover her tracks with more lies. What stopped me? Honestly, anger. Pure, cold anger. Not the hot, explosive kind, but the ice in your veins kind that makes you sharp instead of stupid. I was angry that she'd seen my grief as weakness. Angry that she'd counted on my love for her to keep me blind. Angry that she'd called me an old lady who doesn't have a clue. That anger didn't make me reckless. It made me careful. Patient. Strategic. I learned something important. There's a difference between being kind and being a doormat. For years, not just with Jessica, but in general, I'd confused the two. I'd thought that saying no was unkind, that setting boundaries was selfish, that trusting people meant never verifying their claims. Tom used to say, trust, but verify. I never really understood what he meant until he was gone, and I learned what blind trust costs. These days, I'm more careful. Not paranoid, but careful. I check my accounts daily. I ask for receipts. I say no when something doesn't feel right. And you know what? The people who truly care about me respect that. The people who get offended by my boundaries, well, that tells me everything I need to know about their intentions. Margaret says, I've changed. You're tougher now, she said last week over lunch. Is that bad? No, it's good. You were always kind, Carol. Now you're kind with teeth. Kind with teeth. I like that. Last month, I got a letter from Jessica. She's allowed limited correspondence from prison. The letter was 3 pages long, and most of it was excuses. How she was desperate, how her boyfriend pressured her, how she never meant to hurt me. But the last paragraph said, I keep thinking about what you said. About how I thought you were too old to notice. You're right. I saw your grief and your age, and I thought that made you weak. I was wrong. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want you to know I understand what I did. And I'm sorry. I haven't written back. I'm not sure I will. Some bridges, once burned, should stay ash. But I did feel something reading that letter. Not forgiveness exactly. More like release. She finally understood. She finally saw me as I am not, as a confused old widow, but as a woman who built a life, raised a son, stood by her husband through 36 years of marriage, and had enough strength left over to protect what was hers. People keep asking if I'm lonely. My house is big. I'm alone most days. Tom's gone. Jessica's gone. Michael's in Boston. But lonely? No, there's a difference between being alone and being lonely. I have Margaret, who comes over for coffee twice a week. I have Frank and Linda, who invite me to dinner every Sunday. I have Daniel, who calls to check in. I have a book club, a garden club, and a pottery class at the community center. And I have myself. 64 years of life experience. Wisdom earned through pain. Strength discovered through necessity. I wake up every morning in my house, mine, not Jessica's, and I make my coffee, and I check my accounts, and I tend my garden, and I live my life. Sometimes I talk to Tom. Out loud, like he's still here. I tell him about my day, about Jessica's trial, about the pottery class, where I made a crooked vase that wobbles but holds water, about how I finally figured out his organizational system for the garage and found his notes about restoring that Mustang engine, about how I'm thinking of finishing it, even though I don't know the first thing about cars. I like to think he'd be proud of me, not just for catching Jessica, but for everything that came after, for learning to be alone without being lonely, for setting boundaries, for understanding that loving someone doesn't mean trusting them blindly. There's a moment I think about a lot. When Jessica was being led out in handcuffs, and she looked back at me with such hatred and disbelief. She genuinely couldn't understand how I'd caught her, how the old lady had outsmarted her, and I realized she'd never really known me at all. She'd known a cardboard cutout, the nice aunt, the grieving widow, the confused old woman. She'd never bothered to look deeper, to see the person underneath. The woman who once ran her own business, who balanced the family budget for decades, who navigated the complex medical system to care for aging parents, who learned to use a computer at 50 and mastered social media at 60. Age doesn't erase competence. Grief doesn't erase intelligence. Being kind doesn't equal being stupid. Jessica learned that the hard way. And me? I learned that I'm stronger than I thought, smarter than people assumed, more resilient than anyone expected. I learned that Samwe Bon isn't old. It's experienced. And experience, as it turns out, is the best defense against people who confuse kindness with weakness. The sun is setting now over my backyard. Tom's rose bushes are blooming. I've kept them alive, though I wasn't sure I could. The security cameras blink their little red lights, a reminder that I'm watching. Always watching. Tomorrow, I'll wake up and make coffee and check my accounts and live my life, on my terms, in my house, with my dignity intact. And if anyone else mistakes my kindness for weakness, my age for incompetence, my grief for vulnerability, well, they can ask Jessica how that worked out.